Logan D. Whitney, welcome to Soup the Podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I am very excited to have you on the show because you have just come out with Honor Among Rogues. This is an
Yeah.
incredible pulp collection. And for those who just are listening to our voices, this is a fantastic mass market paperback size, and this is probably one of the best like put together books that I've seen in a while.
Oh,
So
thank you
like
so much. Yeah.
excellent job. Like the stories, I think that that's part of the thing that's fun about like when we start talking about pulp is it's not just the storytelling process, but it's also how the stories were presented to people. And I think it's really
Absolutely.
cool that you've honored it really well with this collection.
Thank you so much. Initially when I set out to write these, like I do kind of like love the art of like putting together a book in like Word and stuff like that. But I was reading Night Over the Solomons, Louis
Hmm.
L'Amour, and the back cover is actually like directly inspired by the back cover of that paperback. I was like, I'm gonna
That's
try my
awesome.
hardest to present this in a way that like it looks like you picked it up in a thrift store. So that's like my goal.
Classic vibes. Before we get too far into talking
Sure.
about the vibes, give the audience just a brief character introduction. Who is Logan Whitney?
Oh, I guess I mean I've worn many hats. I am from Nebraska. I'm from a really small town in Nebraska, but I've traveled and lived all over the United States. I'm a professional archaeologist. I'm a U.S. history teacher. I used to work for the State Department, doing
You're an
tours
actual
of.
men's adventure fiction hero, is what
Yeah,
I'm
I
hearing here.
try. I'm probably not as athletic as I should be to have that role. Because yeah, I had a child almost 2 years ago now, and like that really cuts into the gym time.
Yes,
But yeah, I try. I try.
that's awesome. I really do think that you've done a great job of bringing a you clearly understand the genre, not even again just the packaging, but the stories
Sure.
themselves. I think one of the highlights to Honor Among Rogues is that you gave like this brief introduction to each story that really described what this genre or this type of story means to you and gave a little
Yeah.
context to the audience.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. Like again, this was inspired by the Louis L'Amour paperbacks because he has an author's note before every one of them, and I was like, I can do that. Do people like that? I don't know, but it was fun to write.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that added to the experience. You are like the second or third person to say that, so that means a lot. So cool.
Well, I think in part also what you're describing and when you're talking about Argosy or any of these older pulps is sometimes like the average person has probably seen a cover or two pop up here and there, and
Right,
you do a great
right.
job, Cliffhanger, sharing those covers. But not a lot of people like the pulps. If it's shocking to think these were published like 100 years ago now.
Right, it's insane. And like Argosy is like what, like probably the first or one of the first, and they go back to like mid 1800s, right? When we're talking like dime novels and stuff.
Hmm.
And you can look at these, like there's a few websites that archive ones on PDF. And you can look through like advertisements, and some of them are just wild, and it's like it's an artifact in itself. So it's like a lover of history and archaeology,
Hmm.
like there's a value in that as well. And I guess part of me just wants to be part of that tradition.
Hmm. How did this project come together for you?
So that's a good question. Part of it, I'm going to be honest, I think part of it was fueled by jealousy. So, um, I
Always the
have a lot.
best reason to do something.
Yeah, yeah, it was really motive and like it was a motivating positive experience,
Hmm.
but like I have friends, I talk about him a lot. Matthew John, who writes Sword and Sorcery. I used to host Rogues in the House podcast with
Hmm.
him. Then I saw Nathan Hummel
Hmm.
and Men's Adventure podcast and their books, and I was like, there are people doing things that I want to do. And like I've had experience submitting short stories through Sword and
Hmm.
Sorcery and stuff like that. And I was like, I just need to do something on my own because they're doing it. I want to do it too, and I want to be part of that. And that's kind of where it came from. And I just
Hmm.
hammered it out.
Well, again, the work shows. Like, again, these are really fun pulp adventure stories. I want to make sure I get the title right. My favorite
Sure.
one was The Curse of the Bone God, just because I feel like it's such a pulp story in so many ways. Like it hits all of these like very specific kind of it's it hits like multi-genre of it in such a delightful way where I'm like, I could see this being a Louis L'Amour type story, and you do a great job. Obviously, he's inspired a lot of how you enjoy telling
Yeah,
stories,
yeah.
and it's a great synthesis and distillation where it feels so fresh. If you told me this was written in the 20s, I would 100% believe you, but it's just so crisp and so good.
Oh, thank you. That's got an interesting, I think it has an interesting story on how it came to be too. Nathan Hummel for Pulp Pipe and Poetry on Substack reached out and
Uh-huh.
was like, "Hey, do you want to write a story for us, just like a guest?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. That would be great." And I know like a lot of men's adventure fiction, a lot of readers really like noir and that like
Mm-hmm.
detective stuff, which isn't necessarily my jam. I really gravitate towards outdoor adventures, tropical
Mm-hmm.
settings. So
Mm-hmm.
like I vibe with some noir, but like the gritty inner city stuff doesn't really get me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if I could write a noir-esque story, but set it in like a tropical, some kind of
Mm-hmm.
setting, that was my goal. So that's kind of how that came
Ooh.
about.
I think that's really neat. So something I've been thinking about a lot recently, as you well know, I'm a big fan of the James Bond series, Ian Fleming,
Yes,
all
yes.
that. And I was thinking about what's fascinating with Fleming is that as much as we associate with him with these Cold War spy type stories, he's not very Cold War was not like his main fixation. He wrote
Right,
about that
right.
stuff, but a lot of times because he lived in Jamaica, he picks these tropical settings for so many of his stories. And I think that's part of what makes him stand out from the
Absolutely.
general of that genre.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love James Bond. I was watching, I guess, a story trailer for First Light came out
Oh,
yesterday,
yes.
and it
Oh.
looks like I was already confident because it just looks like a more evolved Uncharted game, but like
Hmm.
it just hits all the high notes for me. But I read the most recent one I read, Ian Fleming's was Live and Let Die, and I've read
Hmm.
it a couple times. And Live and Let Die is such a weird one because like
Yes.
he visits the United States. Yeah, maybe there's some off-color stuff, but when he goes to
Hmm.
Jamaica and he like is doing the little underwater bit and fights an octopus and stuff, like that is just top notch for Logan. I love that aspect of it.
Hmm. Well, and I think that that's part of the interesting part is he realizing how old those books are now. He was
Yeah,
echoing a tradition of treasure hunting. Like the whole plot
right,
of people think of Live and Let Die, they think of the movie with Roger Moore, which is
right.
fantastic. But
Yes,
the plot that has never been used in a movie is it's about pirate gold. And I'm like,
right. It's yeah.
what's more men's adventure fiction than hunting pirate gold?
Yeah, a super spy, international super spy hunting pirate gold that funds an international crime syndicate.
Is
It's
this a
just
Nate Cole novel?
genius. Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I would read that. Big fan. Yes. All those things. Yeah, my best friend is like probably the biggest James Bond nut that I know. So I'm not like as into
Hmm.
it. He's got like watches and pins and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And so we always every Christmas when we were kids, I believe it was Turner Network Television did
Hmm.
however many days of Bond. So
Oh,
we always
yes.
do a run of Bond movies over Christmas. It's our tradition. So
That's awesome. Is there a genre or pulp style story that you've written that you were like, it was this close to getting into the collection, or one that you want to
oh,
write in the next set? Because I am
actually,
assuming this is the
man,
start of more.
it is the start of more. That's a great question. I had written so Honor Among Rogues was written a long time ago. It was
Hmm.
one of I think it was my first um story that was picked up for publication by an anthology. And then I had written Gold Canyon Ghosts. My
Hmm.
dad is a big Western fan.
Hmm.
And I wrote it for Father's Day. Like that
Oh,
was
that's
dedicated.
cool.
And I had these two stories. And then of course the Curse of the Bone God was asked. And I was like, well, now I got these three. And then I thought about like how can I represent the breadth
Hmm.
of what pulp has to offer. And I knew I wanted to write an aviation story.
Hmm.
And it ended up being two. Um, and I because Louis L'Amour's characters, Turk
Hmm.
Madden, is so it just like it's right down the middle of what you'd want in a pulp story. So I
Hmm.
wanted that. Um, and then uh, Fire in the Tall Grass by
Hmm.
L.S. I've never heard his
Goodish.
name. Yeah, there you go, Goodish. I didn't want to mispronounce that. I was like,
It's one
he's
of those
right.
names, yeah.
Yeah. Because he talked about 1923 by Taylor
Hmm.
Sheridan a lot, that first season with Africa, and I was like, Africa is such the it's a quintessential adventure one, so I had
It
to
really
have it.
is.
So I basically curated these stories that I had, and I kind of just take them one at a time. I do have other stories. I'm currently writing a novella that's set
Hmm.
in late 1800s as the
Ooh.
English in go into Tibet to
Hmm.
stop Russians, right? So it's set in
Hmm.
that time period. Um,
Very
and then I
Man
have
Who Would
a
Be King.
yes, which is one of my favorite movies of all
Mm.
time.
Mm.
It's such a
Sean Connery,
masterpiece.
Michael Caine,
Yes. Oh,
directed by, why is his name Danny Houston? Not Danny Houston.
uh, John Huston.
John Houston. It's like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
my goodness, could this man do no wrong?
Right. It's such a great ensemble. They had originally cast Humphrey Bogart, I believe, was supposed to be Sean Connery's, but it didn't like they saw it and they're like, well, he doesn't really fit, right? Like, what a different movie that would be. But yeah, the casting that they ended up in there is just top notch. Um, and then I have like some, for the next collection, I'm gonna do this novella and I'm gonna move on to another collection, and I've got another breadth of stories. More Amazon stuff. I think I'm gonna do like a race car one because like
Ooh.
yeah, there's magazines dedicated to like pulp racing stories,
Hmm.
and so I've read a couple of those, and I want to do that something different. I've got like a Stone Age one, and I'm going to do another novella, and I think that's going to be my cycle for the foreseeable
Hmm.
future.
That's
Um,
really great, like, structure. Because I think this is the thing that I realized after, so last year, and well, don't worry, we'll talk about A Tale of Two Misches.
yeah,
But when
yeah.
I came out with Unwanted Passenger, it was very much oh, well, let's just try this and see how it goes. And
Right,
now I'm thinking in terms of, okay, I actually need to have a plan. How are we going to write some Mitch Mayhew, write some other things, and try to
sure.
keep a regular routine? Because I don't know if you've read, I think it's Lamore's Lost Treasures 1 or 2. Like, he went into a bit of how Louis L'Amour decided to
Sure.
come up with, like, he had I want to publish this many stories, this many books. I have this many arrangements with different publishers, and then eventually became consolidated to one,
Yeah,
but he still had a production schedule. And I'm
sure.
like, I think that it's that angle of you don't want to make it feel like it's just rote, but also you
Right.
need to have a rhythm of expectation to keep the well going.
Absolutely. Which I know you are also experiencing because you have Thorn coming out very soon,
Yes,
which I'm very
we'll
excited.
hold up the proof since it
Yeah,
just
there you go.
arrived.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm so excited. Anyway, the yes,
Yeah,
so hats off. I think that's an
thank you.
awesome schedule to try to get to. And if it's anything as good as Honor Among Rogues, people are in for such a treat. Because again,
Thank you. Yeah.
I read each story with a big old grin on my face.
Good. That's all. Like, I only want people to smile. I just
Hmm.
want, like, I don't hate modern fiction. I have some
Hmm.
modern not novelists and stuff that I really like, and I took inspiration from. A long time ago, back during COVID, actually, I published a small novel with an independent press that was inspired by James Rollins,
Hmm.
who does also write very pulpy men's adventure
Hmm.
adjacent fiction. It's just like thick bricks, right?
Yes.
Um, and I guess I started writing as short stories, and I
Hmm.
think that I personally write best in short form.
Hmm.
I like the idea that you can carry around a small book in your pocket,
Yeah.
and on lunch break, you can burn through a story, or you can revisit a different collection and come back. Like, I love that concept. My dad, when he was younger, he said he always carried around a Lewis Lamore paperback in his pocket, and that's what I
Hmm.
wanted. So,
There's just something so nice about a book that's this size.
yes,
And
absolutely.
I'm just I am not the kind of guy, if a book is over 250 pages, I better damn well like that book to keep reading it
Yeah,
because otherwise
it's
I'm just sitting there going, why am I wasting my time reading about people walking down hallways?
yep, yep, yeah. You run into a lot of that with longer stuff, I feel like. And like I obviously it has audiences, not to
Hmm.
like bemoan them, but like for me it just doesn't keep the attention, which actually kind of informs like my writing ideas because my interests
Hmm.
are so broad, excuse me, that like the short stories lend themselves to random characters. I applaud people who can do one character like you've done sequels. That's so difficult for me to wrap my head around because my mind just goes to like a completely different place. I'm like, oh, I did this plane story. Now I want to go do a race car story. Like,
Hmm.
you know,
Well, and
so
that was part of the very intentional reason of doing Thorn after the two Mitch Mayhews was because I wanted to have something a little different to cleanse the
sure,
palate before I get to writing Mitch Mayhew 3, which
sure.
before we shift to talking to a different topic, I am genuinely curious if people want to, because again, you reference a lot of the classic pulps, classic paperbacks. What magazine or old pulp do you think that people should revisit? Because I know there are lots of, you can get like virtually, because they're all public domain mostly at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
you can get like the collection of X character almost
Right.
anywhere. But that's not always a good thing because sometimes there's a reason why we
100%.
don't remember any of these characters other
Yeah.
than like seven or eight. So I'm curious,
Mhm.
is there a character or a pulp magazine that you think people really need to seek out that they haven't already?
So, gosh, that's such a good question. Um, I think what I love about pulp magazines, which you're alluding to, is that there's like a variety
Hmm.
and that authors that have these like serial characters that recur, like your Conan's, which mostly was all weird tales, but like El Borak was in like three
Hmm.
different magazines. Louis L'Amour was in like four or five different magazines. So like you can flip through these and find, oh, I know that person. Oh, that's
Hmm.
Harold Lamb. I read him in this other one, which is so hard. I think Adventure is such a good magazine because it has that breadth of variety, and you're going to run
Hmm.
into some of those authors that you do recognize from like their character collections or whatever. That said, Argosy has some, well, it's a little more variety because they do get sometimes into like the weird stuff, the science fiction stuff. You're going to get your
Hmm.
Tarzans, your John Carters from Edgar Rice
Hmm.
Burroughs, stuff like that. And the variety present in Argosy is just it's always such a treat. And yeah, maybe not every story hits with you, but like if you read them and just like this is not only a snapshot of another time and another way of writing and telling
Hmm.
stories, but there's some genuinely creative, inventive, imaginative ideas in these. And I mentioned a couple times in Honor Among Rogues, a lot of these authors lived some facsimile
Hmm.
of their stories because that was just the era they lived in. Maybe they were
Hmm.
soldiers on the frontier and like the end
Yeah.
of the Wild West and or in World War II and stuff like that. And you can
Hmm.
really feel that lived experience, which I don't live up to personally.
Says the
But
man who is an archaeologist.
ah, it's not as exciting as Indiana Jones makes it out to be. But
I
eh,
mean, that's kind of just the nature of it. I,
yeah,
I
it
I
is. It
I don't know
is.
if you've seen How I Met Your Mother, but there is
Yeah.
still one of my favorite episodes is Ted Mosby is taking his field trip because he's teaching an architecture class, and he's like takes them on a field trip. He's like, "How many of you are here thinking that mistook architecture as archaeology and think we're going to do cool Indiana Jones stuff?" And like a whole bunch of people raise their hand and walk away. He's like,
Yep.
"Oh, well, that was disappointing."
My wife's been on a big kick with Friends, and Ross is a
Mm,
paleontologist, which is, a
yes.
similar, like, we love our thing, but everyone else is like, this is what you do. Yeah.
Still one of my favorite moments in Friends is
Yeah.
when Ross is hitting on a chick and she's like, "So you're like Indiana Jones." And he sits there and he's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I am like Indiana Jones."
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot like that.
David Schwimmer, his expressions just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cliffhanger magazine. Speaking of classic pulp, I love
Sure.
that you
Sure.
have. So tell us about Cliffhanger. How did it start? I think it's a really great concept we've been doing so far.
Thanks. I guess so. I spend a lot of time through like Rogues in the House podcast and stuff.
Hmm.
Like I spend a lot of time in Sword and Sorcery community,
Hmm.
and that's maybe not my most favorite genre. Like
Hmm.
I like Conan, I like some other adjacent authors, but I also like a lot of the stuff that isn't falling in that. And
Hmm.
there's not really a place for that to go. Like Sword and Sorcery as a subgenre is kind of experiencing a renaissance because you've
Hmm.
got like New Edge, you've got Savage Realms, you've got
Hmm.
Swords Against just comes out, all kinds of places that
Hmm.
are fueling this. And I really want to participate in the other side that's maybe
Yeah.
not the fantasy side, which I do see happening through things like Veritas
Hmm.
and Men's Adventure podcast and the stuff you talk about. So like it's there. Um, I wonder if like Sword and Sorcery found a place to like concentrate passion
Hmm.
that those people have for that. So I want to feed that. That's kind of where Cliffhanger came from. Um, yeah, I want to encourage people to follow in that tradition as well. So
Hmm.
trying to present it.
You're doing a top-notch job. The
Thank you.
Cliffhanger is one of those I really enjoy reading the stories as they come out. You do a great job of just telling good tales. And again, giving that most of the stories, there's a bit of context that you provide to the type of story. And again, I think that
Yeah, yeah.
especially for as we're more disconnected from what those original types of stories were,
Right,
is
yeah.
always helpful and is always interesting. I'm that nerd who likes to read. I have the three on audiobook, the three Conan
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah,
collection.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
honestly, that the introductions or appendix that they give to like the context of Robert E. Howard and the Conan
Right.
universe is some of my favorite of the actual books because it is
Oh,
just
that's awesome.
fascinating getting that. I have Weasels Rip My Flesh, which of
Yeah.
course is that collection of all those men's sweat mags, men's adventure
Yeah.
magazines, but it gives the context for most of the stories.
Yeah. I again, it's the nerdy historian part in me. Like, I want to know about how they came up with these ideas. And like, what's fascinating to me about like these authors, right? We have the internet, we have movies, we have radio, we have audiobooks. But like Robert E. Howard, basically all he did was read. All his inspiration comes from like straight up reading,
Yes.
nothing else.
Bullfinch's
Um,
mythology.
yeah.
I randomly had a copy and I was like,
Oh,
wait,
that's
he's
wild.
referencing
Yeah.
Bullfinch's mythology? I'm like, oh, sick.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, some of those books are like so old, they're out of print. Like you can't like maybe you can find like a scan of them online or whatever, or Project Gutenberg. But basically when this dude, because I know like he was a little bit of a recluse or whatever, like H.P. Lovecraft, they didn't travel very long or very far and wide. And so basically, he's either at his typewriter or he's like in a chair reading, and that's his whole life, and that pours out onto the page. And maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but yeah. And I, as much as I get out of the internet and whatever, like
Hmm.
sometimes I wish I could just go to a cave somewhere and not have to experience that for a few days, but it's so overwhelming sometimes. But
Actually, so to that point, you posted recently a very good Substack about Mother
oh,
Nature in
sure.
adventure fiction. And I think that to your point, it's where having that actual, the real life. It is far too easy, especially today, to just continue regurgitating what's been done before. But being able to A, do real things and B, be in real places really does contribute to the elements of story. Example, I used Denver for Diamonds in Denver
Hmm,
as a set
hmm.
piece because I've traveled to Denver for work
Sure.
several times. San Francisco is going to be the third Mitch Mayhew book
Oh,
like
cool.
location
Yeah.
because again, I've been there enough times. I'm like, okay, this is a good setting for a story, and I think I can get some realism to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, like I think I said in that Substack, like I don't like I understand that everyone has like monetary limits.
Hmm.
Um, and you can find most of the information you want in your research,
Hmm.
especially given how the internet provides us everything. But nothing really can substitute the how the experience informs your writing, the way
Hmm.
you taste things or hear things or smell things. Like I traveled to Peru on my own. I went and saw Machu Picchu. Like it's the
Ooh.
only solo trip I've ever done, and it was kind of nerve-wracking, but it was exciting. It was a real adventure. Um, and like getting outside of maybe your comfort zone. Like that's what
Mm-hmm.
adventure is all about. That's the heart of
Mm-hmm.
adventure. And and yeah, you can write it without doing those things, but it just makes it so much better. And I'm not trying to like say that I'm like the pinnacle of adventure writing or anything, but the more you can go out and experience, even if it's just a hike, you're camping, or hunting,
Mm-hmm.
it's just gonna make your writing that much better because you've lived it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even just the ability to bring the what does it feel like to be outside? Like that,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that, and this is a struggle I honestly have, is as a writer, my default is to lean into snappy dialogue, moving back and forth,
sure.
which is I love doing, but it usually comes at the expense of I'm I have to really work to bring what does it feel like to be in the
Oh,
woods
sure.
or walking down a mountainside or falling off a cliff. These are things that take a little bit more effort for me to actually
Right,
render on
sure,
the
sure.
page, but it brings so much more depth to the work when you can
Absolutely.
add that.
Yeah.
I think L'Amour obviously is a perfect example of being able to
Yeah.
bring the sense of place in a story.
Well, he was so widely traveled. I mean, he even like what jumped trains as a hobo for a while. Like, good on him, right? And so like he got to see a lot, and it was again a different time where that was maybe more feasible. I don't know if I go
We are
jump a
not
train right now,
endorsing
but
being
yeah,
train hobos. That is
no,
not
no.
endorsed on the Suit Up
Uh,
podcast.
um, but yeah, and I find. I don't know, a sense of place, a sense of being when I'm out in nature, when I can really immerse myself in nature. I when I do go hiking and get a chance, like if I'm alone, I like to bring a book and I sit there on like a rock or whatever in the woods. I'm lucky in that like I currently live in New Mexico and the
Hmm.
mountains are like half an hour away.
Oh.
So I can do that pretty much
Hmm.
whenever I want, as long as my daughter allows me to. Uh, but and and then like I used to live in Nebraska, which a lot of people
Hmm.
consider as like a flyover state, but I used to work at a nature center. We had like a bison herd we took care of and
Oh,
stuff like that.
cool.
Yeah, I think it was 8 female bison, and we had a large swath of relatively virgin prairie. It had only been um grazed by sheep for a while, and we
Hmm.
had 2 male elk and stuff. So we like nature center stuff,
Hmm.
and you can really like it takes some effort, which I highly encourage people to do. Like go to a place you don't normally think is like beautiful or like grand and try and find the beauty in it because it's
Hmm.
in the detail. And that's the kind of stuff that I look for in my like when I can add to writing to make it feel more alive. I try.
Hmm. I think you do a great job, and
Thank you.
as someone that lives in Iowa, I sympathize
Ah,
with the what does it mean to live in a potential flyover state,
sure,
and
sure.
I actually have background in agriculture, so the
Oh
whole
yeah.
bison prairie thing, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. This is my jam. I'm already thinking of what does the nitrogen, whatever fixation, etc., have to do
Sure,
with it
sure.
to the point of one of the things that first you came across my radar was when I saw a post about you had published an aviation adventure. I was like, oh, cool, because I can't remember if I had just published Unwanted Passenger or I was going to be. And I click on the post and start reading the story, and it's like the aviator's name is Mitch Faraday. And I went,
Yeah.
oh, that's hilarious. What a coincidence. I think that obviously my first question is just to ask, like, how did you get into aviation pulp? Because I did not realize this was as big a genre until after I had written
Sure.
Unwanted Passenger. But weirdly, this is like a niche genre that had existed during the war.
Yeah. Um, so I actually encountered your book, Unwanted Passenger, about the same time as you probably saw that story. And I was like, oh my God, another bitch. I laughed out loud and my coworkers were like, what are you doing? But yeah, so aviation pulps are so interesting. Because there are actually like I don't know how long lived they are. I don't know if like
Hmm.
whole volumes of them exist anymore. But between World War One and into World War Two, right? The technology of flying
Hmm.
became more widely available to the public as like an industry, not just as like a means for conducting warfare or whatever. And that's where you get like your flying circuses, your world traveling mail carriers, stuff like that. And I think I think Louis L'Amour's Turk Madden stories are probably where I first
Hmm.
encountered that. And like excuse me, I think is what is it? Best of Adventures Volume 2, because they have the
Hmm.
paperbacks. I know it's all one big volume in hardback. Um, but it really reminded me when I was a kid. Have you ever seen that show Tailspin? It was like a Disney.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yes.
really reminded me of that. And so I was like, I can do that. I want to do that. And basically all these stories are like me looking at something and be like, I can do that too. So I try it. And that's where it came from. Just, a little bit of childhood nostalgia and a story I had read recently.
Hmm. There are some moments I'm like, am I really just everything I'm writing? Am I just trying to like live up to Tailspin and DuckTales as a kid?
Yes.
Between those
Yeah.
two things, like
Rescue
informed.
Rangers.
Oh,
Yeah. 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 We had similar childhoods, I can see. I recently introduced my 2-year-old daughter to the old DuckTales. And like,
oh.
we've tried some Disney movies because they're relatively tame. That's like the
Hmm.
go-to. And she clearly is like scared of like the scary things, like Beauty and the Beast. Beast
Hmm.
is scary, but she's so into it she won't turn her eyes away. And DuckTales is very similar. So like we try not to do TV all the time, but like parents, sometimes you need a break. I
Hmm.
get it. This is the world we live in. Just put on something cool. But anyway, um so yeah, that it's a lot of childhood nostalgia, and I don't like necessarily. Well, I hate to say that I don't want to just peddle nostalgia, but my whole shtick
Hmm.
is basically nostalgia. So
But I think that, okay, to our credits here, because again, it sounds like we have similar
yeah,
things that
yeah,
have evoked in us. That's what Lucas and Spielberg did for Star
yeah.
Wars and
That's
Indiana
absolutely true.
Jones. And
Absolutely
like,
true.
I think that's the thing I find fascinating about there are two different ways of going about what we're doing when we're talking about pulp stuff. Is it can either be that 100% doing the same thing over and over again,
Hmm.
or it's taking the stuff that you enjoyed and then synthesizing them into new things. And I think
Right,
that,
right.
again, to your credit, that's where Honor Among Rogues, Cliffhanger, you're taking a lot of these principles and ideas that existed in the zeitgeist and honor those legacies, but it feels fresh. It doesn't feel
No,
like
thank
a
you. Thank you so much.
retread.
I really appreciate that, and I can say the same thing to you. Was it Another Man's Fortune? Was that the first
One
book?
Man's Treasure is
One
the
man's.
my pulp
Uh,
treasure hunt novel.
Yeah, which I have read it. I read it before I realized you had written the Mitch Mayhew
Oh,
one.
thank you.
And so it was just perfect, like just one of those things like, oh, this looks like it's up my alley. Really liked it. It's exactly the kind of thing that I want to read. And you're right, you clearly are inspired by swashbucklers and stuff like that. But it does feel fresh. You are right. I do like to sell myself short. I don't want to make any promises too grand.
Well, I can make the promise that people won't be disappointed if they pick
Oh,
up a
thank
copy and
you.
read
Thank you
it.
very much. Yeah.
And Mitch Faraday is a really great character, FYI. I think that the
Thanks.
my question to you is the choice of the name Mitch, because
Sure. That's
I
so
I,
funny.
I know that I picked it because I was reading Alexander Rose's Empires of the Sky, and of
Okay.
course Billy Mitchell, the
Oh, sure.
father of the American Air Force, essentially. And I was like, Mitchell's a good name. Like it's a good
Yeah,
pulpy
yeah, yeah. It is. Yeah.
1920s-ish name. And I was like, my younger brother's name is Mayhew. And Mitch Mayhew, it's got that cool like vibes to it. So my question is Billy Mitchell also the reason for Mitch Faraday?
Uh, no, I wish mine was as literary of a tradition as yours. No. Back when I worked at that nature center, so like it was a larger park. So there's a city park and then the nature center park, and they had separate staffs. And the manager of the city side that I didn't work for, his first name was Mitch, and that's it. And I was like, because all most of my characters are named from people that I've interacted with or
Hmm.
know, and I'm just like, that's a good name. And
Yeah.
Faraday, I was like, Faraday is where I started with the pulp. Like that sounds
Hmm.
like a pulpy name. What goes with it? And I was like, Mitch. And he just popped in my head, and that's it. It's just a guy I knew one time.
That's fantastic. But that's where some of the best names come from. Uh,
Yeah.
I have coming out with Veritas a crime fiction double with
Ooh,
Nathaniel Hummel. And
cool.
it's going to be my story is a confidence man story, and it features a character named Jack Devlin. That was the actual
It's a great
name
name.
of an old dude that I met at the local library who carried
Oh,
a
that's awesome.
blackthorn walking stick, and he was as Irish as it got. And I was like, yes, I have carried this name with me for, I'm now feeling old, as I say, like the better part of 2 decades.
Sure.
Um, and I'm so excited to finally use it. But that's where paying attention to the details, and this is where I think part of the fun of writing is
Yeah, yeah.
realizing that there's always a story floating out there if you grab it.
Absolutely. My dad and my late grandpa were really into genealogy. So
Hmm.
like
Oh yes.
I can always go through like the ancestry family tree thing and
Uh-huh.
pull out names. Way back on my dad's side, there is a guy, and we don't know much about him, it's just the headstone, and it's his name is JD Wicks.
Ooh.
And the headstone just says killed by Indians in King Philip's War. That's it. So like maybe there's a King Philip's War story somewhere in there, just as inspiration. So
That's really neat. I mean, again, that's a very Lamore type thing with
yeah,
the whole family trees. I
right,
think
right.
that's one of the fun things about this is really just seeing there is a lot of range that within the
Yes,
pulp
absolutely.
genre, it can be as literary as you want to. I remember we interviewed Brian Townsley from Starlight Pulp, and he's
Oh,
always
sure,
like,
sure, sure.
The Great Gatsby is a crime novel.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
can see
it's
that.
but it is elevated because it's, I mean, it's Scott Fitzgerald, it's all these things
Right.
that make it these heightened thing, but it fits very much within the other genres. And I think that any fiction really can do that. It's just it clicking at the right moment.
It's interesting that you bring up Great Gatsby, like F. Scott Fitzgerald, because a lot of those authors, even the like ones we consider classics now,
Hmm.
a lot of them got their start in pulp magazines,
Hmm.
and
Mario
stuff like that. And
Puzo.
then yeah, um, and they eventually ended up getting larger and more popular and having like novel length stuff. Um, do you ever listen to like old radio shows by any
Yes.
chance?
I love good
Um,
old time radio.
Yes, yes. There's one. It's is it Escape? It's not Escape. Yeah, it is Escape. I think it's Escape. And one of the episodes is a F. Scott Fitzgerald story about
Oh.
it's kind of about, if I remember right, it's a relatively like middle class guy that goes to like a prep school and he's
Hmm.
spending summer with his friend that's like super rich, and he's got this like mansion that has like all these like weird 1920s sci-fi gadgets in it, and like there's a little bit of like a dark twist to it, but I
Hmm.
was like, this is the Great Gatsby guy, because it's like not like, it's very of the era and you can
Hmm.
tell, but it's very not Great Gatsby. And I think
Hmm.
that's again where I think pulp shines, in that you can find authors that maybe you knew for one thing and then see how weird they got when they were let off the leash, right?
Well, I think it's called Diamond as Big as the Ritz is
Yes,
the
that's
name of the
that's it.
story.
That's absolutely it.
I
Yes.
have this giant tome that is the complete short stories of F. Scott
Oh
Fitzgerald.
wow.
And he was prolific. People don't realize he made more money
I
writing
had no
short
idea.
stories than he
That's
did
wild.
writing his novels, which, again, to the point of, and actually, this was something I kind of want to bring up with Cliffhanger. I think it's fascinating to see just how the distribution of storytelling has changed because
Sure.
we don't have pulp mags anymore very
Right.
much. Like
Right.
now it's things that are online blogs, Substacks, podcasts. Like there are still avenues to disseminate it, but it's not like there's something on newsstands anymore.
Yeah. Which I mean, I didn't grow up in an era where that was readily available. I saw the very end of like the spinner racks in grocery stores in like the early
Hmm.
90s. Because you said you feel old at 2 decades, and I'm almost 4 decades here. I got like a few years from that. Looking forward to, I guess. But I I definitely appreciate and applaud the passion behind people, because like no one's making a living off short stories anymore. It's just not a market. I know big publishing had a big hand in like pushing the novel, and I understand all that stuff. Um, I'm glad there's an outlet for short stories, and some spheres, like I mentioned, Sword and Sorcery is really finding
Hmm.
its stride with that. The gentleman, his name's Oliver Brackenberry. He's the guy behind New Edge Sword and Sorcery.
Hmm.
I know he recently moved from having a normal day job and publishing on the side to full-time publishing, and that is funding
Wow, that's
his. And
amazing.
like, yeah, it's a huge feat. And I know that they use like Kickstarter as,
Hmm.
the main means to disseminate that and whatever works. And so I'm glad that that's happening for some people. I do wish there were places where I don't know, is it appropriate to say like working class people could find short stories? Because like I know there's
Hmm.
like high-end magazines,
Yeah.
but pulp was really made for like the
Hmm.
average Joe and Jane to
Hmm.
pick up and then toss away.
Well,
Unfortunately, most of them got tossed away.
well, I think that that's something that I can't remember if you brought it up with one of your editorials or someone else brought up with something else, but essentially the mass market paperback existed because it was something that could be cheap, it could be made quickly
Yeah.
and just thrown into spinner racks in a drugstore
Hmm.
or at a train station. And
Yep. Yep.
I think like Raymond Chandler and Mickey Splay are two perfect examples of
Sure.
they became popular because they embraced this as a medium instead of being like, I only can have hardcover books. I have to have the
Right. Right.
prestige. But there, we just don't have something like that really anymore,
Right.
where people are just
Um,
constantly. I'm just curious, do you have any ideas? Like, obviously, people are on their phones now, is the thing.
sure.
And we can try to get in front of them on their phones. But, like,
Right.
what are your thoughts? This is more of just a general open-ended question.
Sure. No, yeah, that's such a great, I don't know, philosophical discussion. Really,
I'm sorry,
because
you didn't
like,
realize this was what you were getting
no,
into when you agreed to
no,
be on the show.
no, I'm so glad because like I don't have anyone to like talk about this stuff in like real life, face to face. This is wonderful. Um, so I think we're currently living in an era and where like the mid-level entry
Hmm.
in almost all media is vanishing. There's relatively most movies are huge budget movies, which I don't think they
Hmm.
need to be. Most books are these giant, big books that have the
Hmm.
prestige and stuff like that. Same with TV shows. We don't have the 25 episode X-Files anymore that uses the
Hmm.
same park in Canada to film every time. We have 10 episodes, and yeah, they might be good TV, but what do I do after the 10 episodes? I don't know. Um, but like Kindle and ebooks in a way fill
Hmm.
that. But the way those platforms have been monetized, like through Kindle Unlimited, they really favor specific types of readers
Hmm.
that just devour books. And those specific types of readers appear to have very specific tastes. This is where like your
Hmm.
lit RPG and your romantasy and stuff comes in. They just devour those, and other things get lost. And it's not. I don't feel like it's an intentional
Hmm.
erasure. It's
Hmm.
just like I understand the market follows the money. I get it.
Correct. Yes.
And
Which I just want to quickly throw
yeah,
out there. You
yeah,
did a
yeah,
great note on your Substack recently about how romantasy. A lot of people treat romantasy as this monster needs to be slain. At the end of the day,
yeah.
it's not the genre's fault.
Right,
It
right.
is literally just publishing moves where the money goes. Like this is actually something that so at the end of the Veritas books, they've been putting the little Doc Veritas.
Right,
And
right.
the whole premise is, well, but he's taking on big publishing. And I have pointed out that there might be a good arc to, well, what do we say at the fact that the only reason big publishing is doing this is because that's where people put their dollars.
Right, right. That's absolutely correct. And so like I'm a very I think I try to be a modest individual. I have modest
Hmm.
expectations, I have modest goals. I understand that what I write is only going to find a relatively niche market, and that's fine.
Hmm.
I love my niche. I will
Hmm.
support people who write in it. I will do anything I can to support that. But I understand that like, you know, my wife's soccer mom friends probably aren't gonna be into it. Some of them
Hmm.
might, and that's fine. I'm
Yeah.
happy to do that. Um, so like this really is part of a passion. I'm not driven to like quit my day job. I like
Hmm.
my day job.
Yeah.
But I want to write and I want to
Hmm.
provide things and be part of things that
Hmm.
have that passionate fan base, even though it might not be the most big thing in the world. And I think as independent authors, it's important to have like a realistic expectation of that. And when I say maybe I'm more of a pessimist because I know people do, like I always try and keep my expectations, you know, relatively realistic. Um, and I just think it's important to celebrate what you have
Hmm.
and instead of like always striving for like this infinite growth model that I think is like this is why we see publishing veer towards
Yes.
the hot topic for 5 years or whatever,
Hmm.
and they're going to shift to something else for 5 years, and that's the nature of the beast. And I have to wonder. So, like, I talk about with another friend about James Rollins a lot. Like, James
Hmm.
Rollins is he writes a ton, right?
Hmm.
Started out with standalones. And I think if you read the standalones themselves are probably his best works.
Hmm.
And when he gets into Sigma Force, which I really like, it's like Doc Savage modern day type stuff. But he's got, God, I think he's pushing over 20 books in that series. And I know that's a marketing choice,
Yes.
right? And you have to wonder, especially as they go on. And I still enjoy them,
Hmm.
but James, you can take a break, man. Like, write something. And he did. His newest release is a standalone. Good for him. But I can tell that maybe he's running out of ideas or he feels burnt
Hmm.
out or whatever. You can feel it in the page. I don't want that to happen
Hmm.
to anybody, really. And I think variety is the path through that. Am I off topic? I feel like I'm just
No,
rambling
no.
now.
I think it's very much to the point because A, um, I've talked a couple of times with Eric P. Bishop, he has started his own imprint. He's doing very well with his books, but
Good, good.
he's interviewed a lot of also traditionally published authors. And the reality is, the idea of making a full-time living off of your books is such a very, very small percentage. It's not very realistic to assume that you're going to get to that. It's good to strive. It's fine if you want to strive for it, if that's your goal, but
Right.
it's
Absolutely.
don't go into it expecting that this is what you're going to
Yeah.
achieve, and people are just going to line up because you published a book. Congratulations, published another one. Um,
Right.
the but with that, like I think that most of history has shown most writers are not making livings writing. Like historically speaking, if we look at the historical
Yeah.
precedents, writing is something that is done as a extra, as something different. There are very few authors that are full-time authors in the scope of
Absolutely.
history.
And
So
like, if we're,
why would we assume that that is the continued model?
yes. And like, and even then, like, if we talk about some authors like making a living off their writing, yeah, maybe that's all they did, but they're living like Robert E. Howard. I think
Hmm.
he was still living with his parents. And H.P. Lovecraft didn't leave anywhere, and that was partially due to psychological stuff going on with him too. But like they weren't making buku bucks off of it here; they were
Hmm.
just paying their bills. And I have to wonder where the image of like the wealthy like Playboy author came from, because I know I'm sure there are some, but like I'm trying to think of like what Romancing the Stone, that author, the woman in that, like that's an example, I guess, but like it's fiction. So I guess I don't know where that comes from. Dan Brown is probably a realistic example, because he sells like a bajillion books every time, but I don't know. Um, I just want to tell stories. And
Hmm.
if people read them, great. If people read them and like them, even better. But I really just want to tell stories.
Hmm. I think that's really awesome because at the end of the day, that's part of the fun of this. I love when I think that a good difference that I like is Norman Rockwell. Probably one of the
Mhm.
most, if you don't recognize the name, you have recognized his work type of character
Absolutely. Yeah.
guys. But he said he was an illustrator, not a painter.
Mhm.
And his point
Yeah.
was it's telling the story. He didn't overinflate what it was. And I think that there's a way of being able to enjoy being an author without basically getting up your butt about it. And
Sure.
telling good
Absolutely.
stories is definitely it.
Uh, I definitely. I guess in my mind, I categorize people who write stories into different camps.
Hmm.
My friend Matt is an author. He focuses on the craft. He stresses about sentences and how many words are in them. And he wrestles with the page until it's the perfect paragraph. I didn't outline a single story.
Hmm.
I start at the beginning and I write to the end, and that's it. And when it's done, it's done. I don't go back and shift scenes around, and that doesn't work for everybody. That's
Hmm.
just the way my mind works. Um, and that doesn't make me better or worse, but those are very different things, right? He is a craftsman. I am basically just putting stuff on a page until I'm happy with it and then releasing it into the wild.
Okay, so actually I have a question on that because in an interview on 24 and 42, you said that titles came to you first and the story grew
Yeah.
around that, which I found fascinating because I'm the opposite, where the
Oh,
title is the
okay.
hardest thing for me to figure out, and I usually don't know it until like literally we're going on draft two or we're on
Sure,
the
sure.
final part of draft one. So I'm curious how
That's
that works
fascinating.
for you.
Um, Yeah, I love titles. I love evocative titles and like pulp
Hmm.
nails
Yes.
titles. Um, they're just so full of flavor. And so like in my mind, I kind of picture what I want. So like Curse of the Bone God. I
Great
wanted
title.
thanks. I knew that I wanted cannibals. Big fan of cannibals in all
Hmm.
shapes and size. Like I just it's such
Hmm.
an evocative
Big
of the
ones,
period
tall
thing.
ones.
Yeah, all that stuff. I knew I wanted that. I knew I wanted a boxer. I knew I wanted to like put it around like the idea that an item was cursed, even though it
Hmm.
might not be cursed. And then it was just, well, simple enough. Curse of the Bone God. Done. Honor Among Rogues, like the theme of the anthology was sacrifice, not
Hmm.
necessarily like sacrifice of life, but could be. And I wanted to focus on the sacrifice of freedom for the sake of honor.
Hmm.
And so, because I was on Rogues in the House podcast, the
Hmm.
word rogue was on my mind. And I was just, there we go, honor among rogues. I think a little bit of that is honor among thieves or among thieves from Uncharted.
Hmm.
So, like, it's all in there. But yeah, I come up with a title and I kind of try and paint a broad swath picture in my mind of what it looks like.
Hmm.
And then I go from there and just see what happens.
One of my favorite questions to ask authors is, do you have a writing routine? And if so, what does it look like? And I know
Um,
this might be something that's changed since you've had a child because I do
yeah,
recognize that that does make a
sure.
difference.
No, it is difficult when you have a little person that takes up a lot of your spare time. Um, So I do most of my writing, whether it's like on break or lunch at work,
Hmm.
or at night when my daughter's asleep, or if I get up early enough. Um, I have to have silence. I
Hmm.
can't do music. I know that really helps some people. It has to be just silence, just me. A cup
Hmm.
of coffee helps. I have to
Hmm.
be sitting at a table and I have to be dressed. I
Hmm.
can't do it in my pajamas or whatever, right? I have to be ready for the day because I like to consider this an aspect of work.
Yes.
I'm trying to do work, so I need to be ready for work.
Hmm.
And that's basically it.
Hey, that's fantastic. And this is, I think, the thing that I really enjoy about this question. There is no one way to do it. And
Right,
it's
absolutely.
really just what works for you. And I'm learning it can change just as much with from project to project as it
Yes.
is from day to day. Because I've had some stories I consistently wrote from this time to this time and it worked perfectly. Other times I spent a year, more than a year, trying to make one
Wow.
work, and
Sure.
I couldn't get to click. I was
Yeah.
literally at a writing slump trying to figure out that book
I
when I
know what
decided
that's
to
like.
do
Yeah.
Mitch Mayhew. Um, and then I came back to this and
Wow. Okay.
completely gutted the plot and rewrote it.
That's
But
awesome. No, that's perfect.
that's the thing. That's
Yeah.
it takes sometimes those iterations, but it also takes adjusting whatever your process is at the time because
Yeah.
factors change, life changes, and it's what can you do to keep writing that keeps you being a writer.
Absolutely. I think so for me, the most important thing is it doesn't matter the word count, but I have to put some words on a page every day.
Hmm.
That's the biggest factor because if I lose the thread, then it's gone for Logan here. Um, and I know a lot of, I guess, aspiring or starting out
Hmm.
writers, authors, storytellers, whatever, they get frozen when they look at a blank page, or they don't think they're good enough, or they have to practice more, read more, research one more thing. I would just highly encourage just put some words on a page.
Yeah.
I know professional authors that do draft after draft after draft. And that's fine, but you can't even start doing another draft if you don't put some words on the page first.
Hmm.
That's all I got.
Logan, I think that that is a perfect button to put on the podcast. Where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and get a copy of Honor Among Rogues?
So you can find Cliffhanger Magazine at www.cliffhangermagazine.com. I do have a Substack called Sword and Six Gun. You can find me there. You can find Honor Among Rogues on Amazon. It's in paperback and on Kindle. And for Kindle Unlimited subscribers, you can get it there as well. Um, I edited three Sword and Sorcery anthologies, a Book of Blades,
Cool.
1, 2, and 3. So you can find those there as well. You'll also probably find a variety of publications that my stories appear in on my Amazon page because I think they're all on Amazon. Um, yeah, and if you're interested, you can follow Cliffhanger on Instagram. I do have a
Hmm.
Blue Sky, which I appreciate that there's no algorithm in there, but I don't use it all that often. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I will link all of that in the show notes. Logan, it has been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we had this time. Thank you so much.
Same.